Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning. We are here again. Welcome to Connect Africa. Kwame Gonza is here with us because even if we want to kind of take a rest from it, it's not allowing us, and it's very important for us. So we saw an article. I will just dive into it right away. Okay, I'm sorry about that little technical issue. So, this punch, what is it called? The punch, if I'm not mistaken. This is, I think, a Nigerian-based online media. So it has come up with an article called "Nigeria has not met OPEC supply quota since 2022." Now, it's interesting to us because we took how the dots are connected. Now, Aliko Dangote exposed these oil mafias working together with the West at the Afrexim Bank conference in the Caribbean just, a few weeks ago. And then we saw the Nigerian government kind of, taking a step, and Bola Tinubu setting up a team in which Dangote himself is in it. And then yesterday we came and talked about Dangote again buying 5 million barrels. Yeah, 5 million. Was it the amount of dollar or was it the barrels? I think it's the number of the barrels. From the United States, regardless of after talking with, exposing that, and then Bola Tinubu promising to work on it, but still buying. And there are also ahead scheduled purchases from the United States. So that was our topic yesterday. And then now we see this article talking about Nigeria, in fact, did not, according to OPEC, there's a quota for the countries to produce. It was 1.7 billion. Was it million? Kwame, you
Million.
correct. Yeah, barrel per day. And it's for the past, I think, ever since January of this year, it is producing less. By how many amounts it is less, and why this is coming? Is it kind of justifying now the government uh, to show why Dangote has to buy from outside? But in any case, it doesn't seem a coincidence event. Okay, it has all the months to come and tell us the report that it's producing less. Even when that is the case, still we believe priorities have to be given for, I think, local producers or refiners like Aliko Dangote. Now, Kwame, I'll just ask your opinion on this one. And yeah, the floor is yours. But before that, I want to tell our audience we have two topics for today, kind of unique. So we're going to talk about Nigeria, this OPEC report, and then we will talk about shortly also about ANC, the African National Congress of South Africa. So it will be both brief. Kwame, sorry for talking that long introduction, but once again, welcome. And yeah, you go ahead.
Thank you, Mahlet. Thank you very much, everyone who's watching us on Connect Africa. We appreciate you, as we always say, for being part of this journey of information, of building one of the most powerful media platforms on the African continent. And of course, which was conceived by Mahlet here, my sister. It is very important to support the platform. So because this is an alternative platform, we've mentioned repeatedly here, countries are pouring huge amounts of money, billions and billions of dollars, in their media platforms so that they can have control over the thoughts of people, how people are thinking. Britain, for itself, it is pouring close to 600 million pounds every year in BBC, corporation, so that it can be able to influence the minds of people. France is doing the same. I was just watching a media broadcast on Al Jazeera, and they are talking about France and how it is controlling the media. And they spoke about this man called Below, who has made his money from Africa. He's a Frenchman, and he's controlling actually the media platforms on the African continent, especially in Western Central Africa, and he's attempting also to buy, multi-choice, which broadcasts this DSTV and all the channels. Okay, so that he can have influence all over the African continent, and he can influence the direction of thinking of the African people. So that is why it is very important that we are urgent as African people to support our own alternative media platforms like Connect Africa, like this, which is concerned about the interests of the African people. This is a rich person who has billions of dollars, and he has made those billions of dollars in owning most of the ports in Africa, including the Tema port in Ghana, which is the biggest port in Ghana. But he owns the ports in Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast, and all these countries, both on the coasts and then inland ports. He owns close to 18, coastal and inland ports in Africa. And of course, these are supposed to be government infrastructures. But on top of that, he wants to control the media in Africa, which is very scary. So we need to support Connect Africa with everything we have, including, of course, supporting us in the PayPal, account, so that we can be here all the time, to be able to sift and to debunk most of the lies that are being pumped out. A lot of lies are being pumped out, and of course, the struggle is to influence the African people and the thinking of the African people, for colonization to continuously have us, accepting that we should be colonized or we should be controlled by someone. And that is the purpose of the media, of course, all these things that are happening. Now, Mahlet has, of course, mentioned the issue of.
Kwame, sorry, don't forget your point, but just to tackle it here before we move to another one, somebody is asking which country is this media. I don't think that question is for BBC, but perhaps maybe for multi-choice.
Yeah,
And again, he's
yeah.
commenting.
So multi-choice is
Say it
is in
from
South
the
Africa.
positive side, right? That him wanting as an African buying the media. Okay, go ahead
No,
and clarify.
he's not an African. He's a Frenchman. He's a French.
Okay.
So he's called Balore. He's a French, and his mindset is right wing. He's colonialist. But he has made his money due to his association, from his association. Like what we mentioned yesterday, we mentioned that, we stated that, the multinational companies, they are the new controllers, they are the new colonialists, but they work as an integral part of the countries where they come from. So they are monopolies. So he has created monopoly over Africa's logistics infrastructure. Okay, so the ports, remember, the ports is where we receive all the goods that are coming into the continent, all the country, whatever it is. So when these ports are controlled by someone external, this is someone who can even starve the country of important, resources or important goods which are coming into the country. And then they have the ability of collecting this data and sending it to France and sending it to the United States to know whatever we are doing and be able to easily control us and even put sanctions, because they will know what are the weaknesses. So he's in control. The gentleman called Balore is in control of most of the media platforms, and satellites, in West Africa, especially from former French colonies, because he's a French and he works with the French government. But he's trying now to go deeper into, the English-speaking African countries, so that he can control the media over there. So he's not an African at all. He just wants to buy multi-choice so that he can control the other parts, of the continent. And France, of course, will have a very big upper hand in that line. Yeah, so that is what it is. So the issue, Marit, maybe you can go back and try to rephrase that question, and what you how you phrased it, regarding the issue of the oil.
Yeah, so the Punch came out with this headline that Nigeria has not met actually the quota that it's expected to produce, which is 1.7 million barrels, billion, was it?
1.7 million barrels a day.
yeah, per day. So now I'm trying to connect the dots with what's happening in the past few weeks, all the events. Now this coming out right after the next day of where we heard Aliko Dangote bought his 5 million barrels from the United States, and where we questioned also how, meaning, after all exposing that and Bola Tinubu promising to work on it or whatever, now this is coming. Is it to justify? Is OPEC aligning? Basically, my questioning is aligning with the government of Nigeria to help them justify, oh, okay, you know what? Nigeria is actually producing below its quota, so let alone to sell like thousands of hundreds thousands of barrels per day for Aliko Dangote. So that's where my thinking comes, and help me to elaborate if we are on the same page. If not, but we are all interested in why and how, so that we all can be clear and informed citizens here.
Okay, thank you, Malit. First of all, let me just give our people a little bit of background when it comes to OPEC. OPEC, Nigeria belongs to that organization called OPEC, which is the oil producing and exporting countries, which was formed in 1960 in Iraq. So the founding members were, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela. Okay, so these were the founding members. Then later on, countries have come and they have been added as time has gone on. Libya, Qatar, and all these countries, Indonesia, they came to add themselves. United Arab Emirates, Nigeria, which was added in 1971. That is when it joined. But Nigeria started issuing its licenses for the drilling of oil way back in, I think in 1930. The first country, let me say, to receive, a license was Shell. As we mentioned, it has been around for, for a long time. In 1938, that is when Shell received the license for exploration. Then in 1955, before, actually it was the colonial administration, the colonial regime, which issued those licenses. Now, of course, as we said, it is 1971 that Nigeria joins the oil producing, exporting countries of the world. And of course, let's remind our people that Angola just came out of the OPEC, of countries. It came out recently. It abandoned it and started moving in a different direction to be independent. So countries apply as they produce. They come into production of oil, crude oil, and normally what happens that if you meet their criteria, they give you a production quota. Okay, they come and sit every year, and then they say this is how much we want to produce and put out every every year, or every day. Okay, every year we are going to put out this, and this is how we're going to push, partition the production, so that each one can have a quarter, what is called a quarter. So if they say that we want to put out 10 million barrels every year, I mean every day. So then they divide that according to the membership in the organization OPEC itself. So Russia has its own quota, Saudi Arabia has its own quota, Qatar, and all the others, they have their own quota, which is supposed to contribute to the total amount, which is saying that OPEC is supposed to produce this amount of oil. Now, Nigeria happens to have been given a quota of 1.72 million barrels every day, okay, consistently for a full year. But this news, what it is saying is that Nigeria has not even been able to meet that quota since 2022, according to a report which came out. It said that OPEC is saying that Nigeria actually has been producing this year, since the report which came out from OPEC in May, say that Nigeria is producing 1.25 instead of 1.75, 1.72 million barrels of oil. And of course, this is a case of concern. It's a case of concern. And of course, Nigeria as a country has very little control over the production, because the multinational companies, they are the ones in control of the production process. And that is why you are seeing even right now that Dangote oil refinery is struggling. It is struggling hugely to get oil for its production, of course, which is disturbing. It is hugely disturbing, and puts the country in a position whereby it cannot take care of, it cannot even anticipate, it cannot plan well, because this situation is sort of like spontaneous. The oil companies, what they want is what they do. Nigeria cannot say, let us increase, maybe produce 2 million so that we can use some of it at home and stuff like that. So this means that we need to invest our own money as a people. As Africans, we need to take control and invest in this industry. And what actually was required for this country when Tinubu came, to power, was the restructuring of the industry itself, and uh, you know, not exactly the so-called reforms that is been playing with, which we call the tinkering. It's been tinkering up and down with the economy, instead of touching the real issue with the economy, which is the production. And what we are seeing, that Nigeria, Dangote's oil refinery has said that it will be able to meet even the foreign exchange. Actually, even certain researchers, reputable organizations across the world, which are engaged in research, have said that the Dangote oil refinery alone will be able to meet the foreign exchange needs of the country. By this, they mean that if Dangote is producing enough, Nigeria should not suffer issues of inflation, because inflation, in many cases, is brought due to over importation, and then you over import, and then you are using the foreign exchange, the so-called foreign exchange, which is the United States dollar. You have to look for them, because you have to use it to buy all these goods that you are importing into a country. But he's saying that Dangote will be able to reduce that pressure, which is affecting the country. So the low production can only be addressed by restructuring the industry, and renegotiating. By restructuring, I mean by renegotiating the the contracts themselves. And Nigeria has to take a huge part. It has a lot of billionaires in the country. Nigeria has to take a very big part, a very big, it has to become a big player in the industry itself, instead of leaving the industry to be controlled by foreigners. This is the only way that all these problems will be addressed. And I'm confident that with Dangote's investment of $20 billion in a refinery, that he will not be able to leave, all this investment to go to waste and to suffer like that, or for him to default on loans, which the international banks, they want that. They want the refinery to fail. They want the Dangote refinery to fail. And of course, working together with their partners, which are the international oil companies, they want this to fail. So I believe that Dangote will not, let himself fail. And if it means him, investing an extra $5 billion into exploration and production of crude oil by himself, setting up, an oil an oil production, crude oil production company by himself, I'm sure that Dangote will be able to do this. And this is what I would encourage him to do in the country. And of course, he has done this even when he was building the refinery. He saw that across the world, there was no construction company which had the capacity to help them to build the refinery. And they set up their own, a construction company within all the construction companies in the world. All those big construction companies, including the ones in China, they were not able, they didn't have the capacity to help them to build their refinery. So I'm confident that, Dangote will be able to rise up to the challenge. He will be able to rise up to the challenge to meet this crisis that is happening in Nigeria. But in all, what we understand is that the government of Nigeria, this habit of leaving the industry on autopilot, on sort of autopilot, on automatic, and leaving it in the hands of what they normally our intellectuals in Africa call the private sector, the so-called the private sector, is what is causing the problems. This false narrative, which they have borrowed from the West, most of our intellectuals, every time you say that the government should play a constructive role, a serious role, they always point to the private sector, private sector. This narrative, this false narrative, I think we have to deconstruct it because it is what is causing most of the problems that we are seeing here. We have to learn to build strong state enterprises that represent the interests of the people and put competitive people, all right, people who are competitive to run these industries. We have to abandon this inappropriate behavior of, saying that we cannot run the public, utilities, public companies, and public corporations, profitably and competitively. If Singapore can do it, we should be able to do it. If China can do it, we should be able to do it because these people are not coming from the moon. So I'm really sick and tired of people who say that the state cannot run these institutions or these companies and run them profitably, when we are seeing that it is the private sector, the so-called the private sector, which is causing problems currently in Nigeria because it has been given an oversized influence into the energy sector in Nigeria. And of course, it is affecting the African continent because if Africa, if Nigeria was producing and was the petroleum hub for this continent, because it has 4 refineries. If all of them are producing to full capacity, add Dangote's refinery, produce it to full capacity. The Nigerian state, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation is involved in the production at 60% in the production of crude oil. Nigeria should be able to supply Africa's, crude oil, refined oil needs. We should not be importing. And this will bring a lot of wealth in Nigeria itself, but it would also bring a lot of wealth in Africa because now all the money, our money will be circulating inside, and it is possible. We just have to position the Nigerian National, Petroleum Corporation to play a huge role in the production of crude oil, feed the 4 refineries,
Myself, I
feed
grew up
Dangote
there,
refinery.
and I don't want to insult it.
So feed the Dangote oil refinery and then produce the refined products for all the African continent so that we can be able to overcome these problems that we are seeing currently. So I believe that all these are deliberate sabotages, from these international oil companies, which Dangote called cartels. It is a tactic, to be, they want to derail the plans of Nigeria being self-sufficient with the help of Dangote. They want to fail Dangote oil refinery from continuing to produce.
So it will be a pity for us to leave this subject without really commenting what is the way forward, or is the way forward is to the state has to run the oil.
I think that the state currently and the ruling class is kind of, many of them are conflicted as we see. We see that some of them, they have double interests. They are part of the cartel internally and helping the international oil companies to do this. So what we see is that we have to build a very strong movement. So even if that movement has to come from outside the continent, but first of all, I think that these frustrations, Dangote has to, to take a very, bold step and enter the production of crude oil by himself. All right, because he has the money. He has the capacity to invest about 5 billion in this. Whether it is 1, 2, 3, 4, $5 billion, he should be able to invest it. I believe that Dangote can enter into the production of crude by himself to supply himself and fight off these international oil companies. And as he has to empower, I think that if the state itself has made itself weak, that it cannot act to protect the interests of its own interests and the interests of the people, then Dangote has to work with the revolutionaries, the Pan-Africanists. There's no option to work with the people to remove this state and put a stronger, government, a Pan-African government, which will be able to take the interests of the people and the interests of the country seriously, and not leave the fate of the country and the people in the hands of foreigners, the so-called international oil companies, who have been given a blank check to do whatever they want, in Nigeria and the rest of the African continent. So I think that as Africans, we need to take these matters seriously. This behavior, whereby people say, "Oh, you are from Nigeria, you are from Congo, you are from Ghana." So I believe that all of us as Africans, we have to recognize these problems, that this enemy is eating us because we are dividing ourselves. Now we need to build a movement which starts even all over the African continent, and point to these problems critically and say, specifically, and say, we don't agree with what is happening in Nigeria, because we believe that if Nigeria is doing well, all these refinery infrastructures are doing well, there's going to be a lot of wealth within Nigeria, but that wealth is going to be also coming to Africa, because Africa is going to stop importing all the crude, they refine the oil. All right, because this is the interest of us as Africans. So I think that we need to build a strong movement, working with with our brothers, as Africans in Nigeria and all over the African continent, to take on these problems, seriously, and combat these foreign oil companies which are causing these problems.
Thank you, Kwame, for that. So, before we move to the second topic for us for today, I really want to add on that one, where you said Dangote has to now resort to also extracting the oil, this crude oil, by himself, rather than expecting it from the so-called, these international oil companies, rather these oil mafias that are based in Nigeria. Now, that's really good, because when it was established, actually, Aliko Dangote said that what he's going to, the numbers that they are targeting to produce will satisfy the whole need of the aviation industry in Africa. And it was actually a few weeks ago, the Ethiopian Airlines, which is the biggest airline in the continent, said that African aviation companies have to consider lowering the price of the ticket, because there is a bigger need of Africans, citizens wanting to fly from one place to another. And as big as Ethiopian Airlines is, or as being a hub of the aviation for Africa, it cannot even fulfill it. And that comes, these ticket prices are skyrocketed because they blame it on fuel. So all that, can be solved. It's really an all-rounded thing. It's not just Dangote making money out of oil.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
a lot of problems in the continent.
Yes, the whole energy industry is connected to the transportation industry. So that's how it is connected to the aviation industry. That if you are producing these energy within, you are taking your own raw materials and turning them into refined fuel, then definitely you're gonna put down the price of oil. We saw this with the government in Libya, that under President Gaddafi, they had very cheap fuel because they are using their own fuel. They have their own refineries. So there's no reason why you should have expensive fuel if you are producing it and refining it for yourself. So that means this is going to loop through, because remember that most of the times the energy industry is the backbone of all economies. All goods move through, whether it is on rail, on vehicles. They take all these, they consume fuel, and if that fuel is cheaper, then the goods are going to be cheaper. The agricultural goods are going to be cheaper, which are coming from the farm. So all the services are going to be cheaper. So it is going to play out. Okay, it's going to affect, there's going to be a multiplier effect, that these benefits will have a multiplier effect onto all the other industries, and production of the country. So I think that you are right with what you are saying with the aviation industry.
important thing, because every time when the fuel increased and the government increases, I mean, forget about the aviation, even when the price of fuel increases, the price that we buy locally, then everything, the soap you buy, the chewing gum you buy, like every little thing will increase because they bring it by transport. So yeah, hopefully Aliko Dangote, it's not just that I wish he sponsor us, but we have nothing, but we know that because we can imagine the immense influence, positive influence it can bring to the continent. And that's why we are repeatedly making a program that is related to him. Yeah. Now, moving to the next topic, it's about the African National Congress. I'm going to leave you to watch this video with us. And when we come back, I'm going to throw a question to Kwame that he has to update us in what's happening in South Africa and, where it is heading.
Of us to understand intricate motive forces in a struggle. And so I don't want to say to you, oh, the ANC is this, because the ANC is an amalgamation of different elements. And there's a character of the ANC that is genuinely involved in a struggle for national liberation. It's very thin, but it's there. There's a broad element of the ANC that I think is a conscious ally of capital. And there's a broad element in the ANC that is an unconscious ally of coloniality. And then there's an element in the ANC which I think is very dominant. I'm not saying it's many people, but it's dominant. It's people who sold out a long time ago. And that selling out, that infiltration of a liberation movement, which is always the desire of those who oppress others. That element in the ANC, it's not the only element, that element is in charge now. And that element has money. And that element buys others, silences others, or co-opts them. And that's where we are. But the ANC, you've got to analyze different elements in it. And there are counter-revolutionary elements in the ANC. They are conscious and unconscious. And we've got to analyze each motive force in this broad church. And then after analyzing what's there, which one is dominant, at what time? And the dominant one now is the one that protects capital. And if you really want to analyze it, because, South Africans handle debates in a binary fashion. You start from 94, you start with Mandela and critique it, not criticize it. Critique that moment. It has elements of greatness, of a great breakthrough, but it also has elements of co-option and being an ally of the very system that we're trying to defeat. You come after that with the Thabo Mbeki one. I know Thabo Mbeki people see themselves as the sort of high-class, sophisticated intellectuals. That moment, too, has good things, but it was also an ally of Western modernity, which is why people who are in that area believe they are superior, they are the golden age. It's because they don't see their errors. It's the arrogance of that period of people who think they are superior intellectually because they believe in Western modernity. There is a Zuma era. It has errors. It disrupts the system. But that too has elements that you must analyze, that get into it, that have elements of counter-revolution. All of these presidencies, the three that I've mentioned, had good and bad elements of disruption, others to maintain. I don't want to talk about the current one. Because quite frankly, it represents the conclusion of a system where people are bought, where revolutionaries are completely bought. And those who are not bought are clapping hands, either because they were part of the selling out themselves or they benefit financially from the system. I always say, anyone who's my age, was in this struggle, is my age or older, and likes the current leadership of this movement. Two types of people. They worked with those who are in power during apartheid. They worked with them. Whatever they were doing, they worked with them. Or they benefit financially from the current setup. Both of which cause pain to the ordinary, struggling, black, African, poor person who trusts leaders of a revolution, even when they've sold out. You use an interesting word, rival. Maybe they're not rivals. Maybe white people in the DA and some of our leaders are actually not rivals. We just don't know when they cemented the relationship. So I actually don't think they're rivals, because policy-wise, there's no difference. Historically, there are differences. And I think an organization like the ANC that was truly at the heart, at the center of the anti-apartheid struggle is always vulnerable to infiltration. And I think that process of infiltrating and destroying the ANC that all of us grew up in is almost complete. I actually think it was completed a couple of years ago, and maybe decades ago. Maybe we get into post-apartheid South Africa with an ANC that is already, in some ways unconsciously, a project of the amalgamated agendas of foreign and low and domestic intelligence and capital. And our leaders, consciously or unconsciously, were eager to inherit a country that had stability. And in that desire to have stability, selling out happened, co-option happened, cowardice happened, and just the development of new interests. That we developed new interests. I was asking you guys now, where are our young people? People who've always liberated countries. We just vote. We are voting cows every 5 years. Sheer electoralism is not going to help us. This country requires stop to this mess and a new philosophy of running things, and not the elitist things by these foundations. No, who are trying to reclaim the moment in order to ensure the continued survival of their funders and to reclaim our future once again, where people who have been part of the problem want to determine the solution so that they can recycle the problem. Our young people have a moment now to put a stop to this. And I'm saying young people because all people like myself and others are naturally cowards. We're looking at our interests, bonds, and all of these things. It's young people who have very little to lose, who take on countries and create better futures. And it requires just our young people to take on this government, to take on this philosophy, which is neoliberal in character and taking us nowhere. We just need to grow a little bit of spine, some courage, not recklessness, courage to take on a government and bring it down lawfully.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. Want more awesome content? Follow us on all our social.
What a revelation. Well, in some ways it's expected, but in some ways it's just show you how this thing is fluid. And I don't know what is a way out for South Africa and what it will leave, even it's gonna be more worse, as it has opted to create this so-called government of national unity that puts the DA, which is run by the imperialists and who has no interest of the Black people, where it will be headed, and perhaps we will see with this sheer electoralism, the end will be maybe appointing what was that person's name? I forgot. Oh my God, the one who shake-handed with Mandela, Frederick.
Yeah, I think I've forgotten his name.
Yeah. Anyway, so people's like even the DA leader, and we will say white man again on that presidential. So why not? But yeah, go ahead, Kwame. And what does this tell us? Where will it lead South Africa with this? This man has said quite a
Yeah,
lot.
the elder has revealed a lot of things in that video, and some of them, of course, we have touched on them in our analysis in the past when we're looking at the government of national unity. We encourage everyone to go back and look at the video which we did on the ANC, and we asked the question: is the ANC finished because of its alliance with the Democratic Alliance? Yes, I think CNS has shown it to us. It's de Klerk. Yeah, he was called it.
And this is here to help us.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So we touched on this relationship of the ANC and Democratic Alliance, and of course it looks like we are being vindicated right now, even by the internal analysts of the situation in South Africa. The fact that I've not actually seen any media platform which has mentioned that what we mentioned, that the ANC moved in the opposite of where the divorce went. I think we are the first media platform to mention it here. that instead of the ANC looking for where its votes went, which is at the to the MK party and of course the EFF, it went in the opposite direction of where the vote went. Its votes were not lost to the DA, but rather to the MK party and the EFF party. And of course, this has given us even more confidence in our analysis. So the elder touched on a lot of things, and in fact, how he's speaking, it makes you feel sorry for the country itself, and it makes you sad, of course, for the for the whole continent. Because look, this situation is not only peculiar to South Africa; it's the same situation that we are having all across the African continent. But I'll give my own again analysis of his speech. We have mentioned in the past, if you go through our videos where we have spoken about the ANC and its approach, of course we have also looked at it as a positive force in certain cases where we have mentioned its ability to protect the interests of the African people, but also where it has gone wrong, especially when it comes to the domestic policy. On the international and foreign policy, front, the ANC, is excellent when it comes to protecting the interests of the African people, and we saw that the President Ramaphosa was able to push back when they were trying to blackmail us. The United States was trying to blackmail us, and Naledi Pando, Madame Naledi Pando, Dr. Naledi Pando, she played a very, beautiful role, powerful role, constructive role in protecting the interest of the African people.
We have here analyzed the case of Ethiopia is one of the kind, how they defended Ethiopia in 2 times when the US was attacking both on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and the war in the northern part of the country. So yeah.
Absolutely. And all this, we have analyzed it on this channel. And of course, like no other channel has done it, like no other media platform. So this is the very reason why you should not take this media platform, which we are building, for granted. This is a very important platform that is touching real, core issues. Now, the Madame Naledi Pando, you could see how they fought against the admission of Israel in the African Union itself. All right. So these on the on the foreign policy front, you can see that it is being very strong. But on the domestic front, the dilly-dallying and of course the weaknesses internally of corruption and the decay of the party and the lack of any internal mechanism for checking the party when it is going off the rails has been a major problem. If you look at organizations like the Chinese Communist Party of China, it is built within it a mechanism, and of course, it is in the very DNA of the party itself, how leaders are selected and how they come up, not merely appointment through, not merely appointment, but they are tested, not because people were somebody's comrade and he was just my comrade and stuff like that. So in an organization like the Chinese Communist Party, a mechanism already is built within it that you at least you have a chance for leaders to rise who will check the organization if it is facing decay. And I will take you back to President Robert President Mao Zedong, who of course is one of the founders of the CPP and father of modern day China. He was a strong man, and of course he made some mistakes, but at the same time he built a strong foundation for China, on which foundation people like Deng Xiaoping and Hu Jintao and others, who came later on before President Xi Jinping, they came and built. So Deng Xiaoping came, and even at that point when Mao Zedong was still the president and the chairman of the CCP, he looked at Deng Xiaoping because of his reformist elements. He banished him. Deng Xiaoping was at once banished from the party, and it is until later that they saw that okay, he is qualified. He's not selling out that they brought him back, but Mao thought that he was selling out. So what does this mean? It means that the party within its DNA was built by Mao with a mechanism for checking, all right, for checking arrogancy, for checking sellouts within the party itself. And when you see Deng Xiaoping later on, even though he came and opened up the country and built on the foundation, of course, the industrial foundation which Mao had laid to open up the country and outside capital to come into and rapid development, you can see that still the elements of the party itself, you could see them in him, that he did not succumb completely to capitalism. All right, which element is missing, within the ANC itself, that it did not retain its Africanness, it did not retain its identity as an African institution, but rather gave in everything to neoliberalism. All right, so even though once in a while it struggles, it struggles to find that and of course, which we see right now, that it's supposed even to show that it's supposed to find that internally most of the times, but it has failed to find its identity, its African identity, its revolutionary identity internally, domestically, even though it has found that on the international stage. And of course, this is very worrying. We see, Deng Xiaoping after Mao Zedong, that Deng Xiaoping, later on, when there was this Tiananmen Square, so-called, demonstrations, that he brought up a very strong arm to show the people that even though we have opened up and embraced the use of capital, all right, we are not capitalists. We are capitalistic, as the political scientist Eli Curie says, that there's a difference between being capitalistic and being a capitalist. We are not capitalists. We are socialists. We are practicing socialism with Chinese characteristics. So we use capital because we want to build even our own state enterprises. We require capital, but it doesn't mean that we have sold out completely and become capitalists. So this is what the ANC has failed. So when the people rose up to demonstrate, I think it was 1989, they thought that now Deng Xiaoping, because he has opened up to the use of capital, now he has sold out completely. And he brought up a very strong arm that they have to put back these people in their rightful position. And so we see that organization has within itself, it has built itself within itself, its identity. All right. So it has built itself an identity within itself, a Chinese identity, that even though it absorbs these modern characteristics, this modern use of capital, for example, it has not, it has not sold its identity, the identity of the Chinese people completely, and abandoned it, which we see with the South African ANC. So whether you like it or not, however you analyze the ANC at this point where we are, you can only say that it is failing, and it has failed. Now, we need to be able, as an organization, as ANC, to find itself, because the disappointment is huge, even on the side of Africans. We as Africans who are outside here, outside South Africa, we are, disappointed with the way things are going, because we expected such an organization to radicalize instead of, again, moderating more and selling out more, the interests of the African people. I expected that organization, the ANC, to move radically. And in the past, actually, I had started seeing those moves whereby, President Ramaphosa was visiting Democratic Republic of Congo, visiting, Congo, I think it's Congo Brazzaville. He visited, he visited Kenya, he visited, I think, invited Samia Suluhu of Tanzania, he invited Museveni of Uganda. He himself, President Ramaphosa, visited Kenya. So these are the moves which I thought that they are the right ones. They are supposed to talk about the question of land, because this is a very serious issue. We are talking about the factors of production, land, labor, capital. Of course, we don't have the capital, but how can we leave, the land with these, colonialists to continue to control the land? So these things were supposed to be addressed. And this required the party to radicalize. And this, again, required the party to mobilize the African continent. Because remember, these capitalists are going to come after you if you try to take back the land. Now, you need the mobilization of all the African continent. And there was no better person to do that than Madame Naledi Pandor. There was no better person to do that. And what shows us that the party has really, the leadership of the party has really taken it in a different direction, dropping people like Madame Naledi Pandor. And we see Mr. Jaishankar, in India, India's foreign minister, he's been retained. He's part of the cabinet. We are dropping the people who are capable and bringing incapable people. So this is actually one of the signs which show us that the party is going in a different, direction, in the opposite direction, and in a very wrong direction. And I think this one, we don't even need to fear to say that the party is really going in a different direction. And now, even though that element, the revolutionary element, is still there, now the question is that will the party be able to discover itself once again and come back and bring itself back on the road, especially on the domestic front? Of course, it has done very well. It has done very well, on the foreign policy, like we mentioned. But will it be able to discover itself on the domestic issue and on the issue of the land, on the question of the land, and on the question of the minerals within the country? Will it be able to discover itself and come back from where it has gone, where we think that it has gone off the rail? So that question, I think, will be answered by the leaders of the ANC themselves internally, especially the top leadership of the party, so that they can stop, this, what we see as the selling out of the African people. So I think that these are the things which the elder tried to address. But another important key issue which he addressed is the issue of the youth. And of course, we all know that the power is in the youth. Of course, this is the way forward. The youth have to take on the responsibility of rescuing the continent, the country, and the continent when it has gone wrong. And we have seen this in Kenya, that they have to hold it strong. They have to be consistent, and this consistency, we saw that it bore fruits. In Kenya, results. The man has sacked the whole cabinet. The man withdrew the bill. So this is the consistency that is required. Now, this is what we want to see, not only in South Africa, but even in Nigeria, in Ghana. We want the young people to come out and correct these people who are misleading the continent. Because if you leave them, they think that they are doing the right thing. If the Kenyan people, the Kenyan youth had left it, these people, they would have passed the bill through, and all those ministers would be at post by now, right? But they stood up and said, no, we cannot allow this. But you see, in Nigeria, people are doing whatever they want, the leaders. You see in Ghana, the so-called heads of state are doing whatever they want. They impose all kinds of taxes, and they borrow more money, and they misuse it. They don't account for it. And of course, the young people will sit down. So we want to see the young people all over the continent taking that responsibility. Maybe one thing, I'll just criticize the elder, just one thing a little bit, which I would like to disagree with him, where he said that they need to do it lawfully. So in all, generations, for all people who have rescued countries, whatever activities they have carried out, they have been considered unlawful. All right. So when he says they should do it lawfully, I don't understand what it means by lawfully. And for me, if you speak like that, it is like you are telling people that they should operate in a certain way in order to save the country, all right, to be able to rescue the country from these evil forces that are holding, the country hostage, all right. And of course, this is limiting. It puts a boundary, to where we can operate and how we can operate to be able to liberate the continent, or liberate the country, as South Africa, the boundaries in which the youth should operate to be able to stop these evil forces that have taken over, the resources of the country. And of course, the ANC, the African National Congress itself, and they are taking it in the wrong direction. If you look at all revolutionaries and the young people who led revolutions, the Nkrumahs themselves during their time, they were considered, illegal. The activities of Nkrumah were considered illegal. People, the activities of Malcolm X himself, the activities of Dr. King, in the civil rights movement. The United States considered these activities illegal, and that's why Dr. Martin Luther King was arrested a couple of times. Nkrumah himself was arrested a couple of times. In South Africa itself, the ANC itself, whatever it was doing, it was considered illegal. All the ANC and the other leaders of the Pan-African Congress, people like Robert Sobukwe, they were arrested, and even they died almost in prison. They died in prison. So all the activities were considered illegal. So I would expect from the elders for me to say that the youth, they should rise up by any means necessary and liberate, the continent, liberate the country, such as South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, liberate it by any means necessary, because the time is running out that the enemy is taking over, the control of our countries and our resources, and we will not have anywhere to stay going forward, and it is very dangerous. So this is what I expected from him to say. Other than that, I think that he's spot on, in his analysis, and of course that is what we have done also here at Connect Africa in the past, in looking at the ANC and its direction, where it is going. Thank you so much, Mahlet.
Thank you very much, Kwame, indeed, to come here in such a short notice. We all spoke just this afternoon, but, we are happy we are able to bring you here as it is, so that no mainstream media will dump and, invade you with their propaganda. Now, if there's any question, I don't know if it was forwarded here, but I think for us, we have covered what we plan to cover. Once again, thank you for tuning in, for all your suggestions, your comments, for your time, really, more than anything. It's not easy. We are not, as we always say, a click and bait. We are here really after doing enough research on the subject. We are here to give you, it's an alternative platform, a Pan-African perspective. That's all what we are interested. That is the starting point for us. That is the ending. That's why we have this platform, and that's how we end it. Even if we give you historical background or whatever is a contemporary in, the end goal is to have that African perspective for us. So nothing else. No plus, no minus. And thank you again for all of you who are supporting us through our PayPal account. We don't take it for granted. I am also, there are emails that are coming in suggesting on what, some of you definitely fear for us that they might silence us. And not one, not two, not three. I'm receiving such emails also in the comment sections. But if there is anything that's, as Kwame said, that should be the very reason that keep us going. That means if the enemy wants to silence us, that's, we are saying then some important things. But of course, then alternatives have to be prepared. Definitely, that's something, we need to think about. But continue to share the video with others, and whatever it is, to support us through the PayPal account, and subscribe and like the video. As long as we are here, we are committed to do the job. It's a duty for us. I think that's it, Kwame. Unless you have some lasting word, we will end it here.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. As Mahlet has said, please support the work which we are doing, so that we can continue to be here much, much, much more, without worrying about the fact that we are serving the continent. This is very important. What is needed for us is to mobilize. What is needed in Nigeria is not actually more production of oil extraction. What is needed there in Nigeria, what we see, is the reformation. The structure, the system has to be restructured. The contracts have to be renegotiated, and the government has to take a leading role. The Nigerian National Corporation has to take a leading role in the production of crude oil, so that it can be able to meet the needs, our needs, and not leave it in the hands of foreign oil companies. And the ANC itself also we think that it has to get out where it is going and radicalize and move in the direction of taking back the land and the resources for the interest of our people. So support the channel, support the work which we are doing. And yeah, we will be happy, to count that, yes, we had our core group of fans who supported this channel, this media platform as it was growing, and yes, we'll continue to serve our people until we see that the continent is unified in our lifetime. Thank you so much.
Bye bye. Thank you.